Welcome back everyone, I'm Nick, this is Swiftful Thinking, and as I mentioned, we're going to build this to-do list app with MVVM architecture, and that stands for Model View View Model. Now it's okay if you don't know what any of that means yet, but the first V in MVVM stands for views, and that's what we're going to build in this video. So in the views should be all of the UI logic in your app. So anything relating to a screen or a component that a user is actually touching, that goes into the view. And in this video, we're going to build the two main views in our app, which the first view is going to hold a list of to-do items, because this is a to-do list app. And the second view is going to have a little area where we can actually type something in and add a new item to our to-do list. So this is going to be one of the easier videos in the course because it is so straightforward. We're just adding SwiftUI components to the screen, and by the end of this video, you'll have a good idea of what our app is going to look like. So that's enough of me talking, let's get coding.
All right, so I am on my computer here and I'm gonna open up Xcode. If you don't have Xcode on your computer and you don't know what Xcode is, I highly recommend going to check out the SwiftUI Bootcamp, which is another series I have on my YouTube channel. And in the first couple videos of that series, we downloaded Xcode, installed it, and then went through some of the basics and how to use it. So if you're taking this course, I'm going to assume you already have the basics of Xcode down because I did provide that in the SwiftUI Bootcamp. And with that said, I'm going to be using version 12.3 for this course. Now, it's not crucial that you have the most updated version of Xcode, but I would recommend using version 12.0 or higher. And let's get started by creating a new Xcode project. It's going to ask us what type of project we want to create, and this is going to be a fairly simple app. So we're just going to use a regular app, and we're going to make sure that it's on the iOS tab because we're going to build our app just for the iPhone and iPad, which is iOS. We're not going to do Mac, Watch, or TV in this video. So regular iOS, regular app, double click it or click next. Then it's going to ask you for a product name, and this is just the name of your app. I'm going to call it to-do list in camel case. And I find it best practice to not include spaces in the product name. So I'm doing to-do list, but I'm making it one word with no spaces. Your team, if you have an Apple developer account or a professional developer account, that will be up in the team here. It's not crucial that you have one, so it's okay if it says none. And then the organization identifier, again, not super important because we're not putting this into the App Store, but it is best practice to use com dot and then either your name or the name of your company or your organization, whatever you want to call it. And then it will create a bundle identifier for this project. It was just a unique key for this project. And so it's going to be your organization identifier dot your product name. The important thing on this screen is that we are using a SwiftUI interface. We are using a SwiftUI app lifecycle, and the language, of course, is Swift. In this project, we are not going to use core data and we are not going to use tests. So you can uncheck these if they are checked. And let's go ahead and click next. Go ahead and find the folder where you want to save it on your computer and go ahead and click create. And now that we're in our project, I'm going to make it full screen so you guys can see it a little bit better. And let's click resume on the canvas so we know we're all connected. I'm going to hide the inspector on the right side because we're not going to use it. And this should be nothing new to you guys. Xcode starts us with a project, a very simple project where we have our app.swift file and a content view. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to use MVVM architecture in this app. So before we do any coding, I want to just quickly run through what that means if you are unfamiliar. So I'm going to jump into the to-do list app.swift file, and we're going to leave some quick comments. So I'm going to do a multi-line comment with the backslash and asterisk, and we're just going to write MVVM architecture. And the first M stands for model, and model is a data point basically. The V is a view, and this is the UI of our app. And then the VM is view model. And this is the observable object or the class that manages the models or the data for the view. So manages models for view. And there are a ton of resources online. If you just Google MVVM architecture or what is MVVM, that will go into detail about what this is. So I'm not going to dive into detail because there is stuff out there, but on a very basic level, the model are the data points. The view is the actual UI components, the SwiftUI code. The view model ties it all together. This is where all of our data is managed. So with that said, we're going to start building this out. And the first thing we're going to tackle is the view. So right now on the left side in the project navigator, let's right click it. Let's create a new group and we're going to call this views. So just like we have model view and view model, we're going to have model view model folders. And in this first views, I'm going to right click on the folder, create a new file. It's going to be a SwiftUI view. And we're going to start building out our first view. This is going to be called list view. Go ahead and click create. It's going to create a new file. We've done this many times if you followed the SwiftUI bootcamp. Click resume on the canvas just so you know we're all connected. And because we're going to be using this list view, we actually don't need this content view. So I'm going to right click on the content view and just delete it from our app. That's the default view that just came with our blank project. I'm going to move it to the trash because we are not going to need it. And then I'm going to jump into to-do list app.swift file. And in this file, the first view that our app is looking for is that content view, which we just deleted. So we can actually change this out for a list view, which will be the first screen in our app. Now I want our entire app to be wrapped in a navigation view. So we could add that navigation view directly in the list view code, but because I want to make sure that the entire app is always in a navigation view, I'm going to actually add it to this file. So before we add the list view, let's just add a navigation view, open the brackets, and then we're just going to put the list view inside. So now we know that all of the views in our app are automatically always going to be within a navigation view. Let's jump into the list view and start doing some coding here. And when we're back in this file, we might have to click resume to reconnect it. And we know that when we get to this list view, we are going to already be inside a navigation view. So to make the preview look the same as it would in our app, let's put the preview inside a navigation view as well. So down here, I'm going to add navigation view, open the brackets, and put our list view inside, just so that we have the same environment as in real time when we're running our app. We click resume on the canvas one more time. So the main object on this list view is of course going to be a list. And let's add a list by typing list, open the brackets, and for now let's just add some text in here and we'll just say hi, just so we can get a list going. And you'll notice that the list starts a little lower on our screen, and that's because we have room for the navigation bar because we're in a navigation view. So let's set that up quick. Let's add a navigation title. So underneath the list, .navigation title, and I'm going to call this to-do list, and I'm going to press Control Command Spacebar to open up the emojis, and I'm going to type in memo, and then there's a cool little emoji icon that I'm going to use that looks like we're writing something. So just a nice little UI there. And then all of the items in our list are not, of course, going to say hi, but they're going to have a little check mark whether or not they are completed, and then a title for what the actual list item was. So let's start building that out. I'm going to create an H stack here instead of this text. H stack, open the brackets. The first thing we're going to add is an image, and we're going to use a system icon. So we'll do system name, and let's do checkmark.circle. Go ahead and click resume on the canvas just to make sure we are all connected still. We have a nice check mark there. We're going to customize it a little bit later. And next to the image, I want to add some text. So let's do text. And we're going to say this is the first item. I'm going to change this later, of course. And just to make sure this is all pushed to the left side, although it already is because we're in a list, but let's just double check by adding a spacer on the right side to push everything to the left. Now we're going to have a whole bunch of rows in our app, and each of the rows are going to have maybe a different image, whether or not it is checked or not. and they're all going to have different titles, of course. So because we're going to reuse this a bunch of times with different information, I'm going to make this its own component, this H stack. So I'm going to hold the command button, click on the H stack, and I'm going to extract subview. And while this is highlighted, I'm going to call it list row view. So now we have a list row view in our list, and the list row view, which is created down here, is just that row. So before we move on, I'm going to actually take this list row view and make it its own file, just to keep the code kind of clean and separate between our files. So I'm going to right click on the navigator, create a new file. I'm going to make a SwiftUI view. I'm just going to call it list row view, which is what we just called it. Click create. And I'm going to go back into where we were with this list row view. I'm going to cut the extracted subview. I'm going to jump into our new file and just paste it over the template hello world. So now we have our list row view here. And if I click resume on the canvas of the list row view, we should see just one list row view. So let's customize this a little bit by making the text, the title here, dynamic. So we'll create a variable at the top. We'll say let title of type string. And then we're going to put that title into the text here. So we'll just put title. Now every time we call list row view, the initializer is going to ask us for a title. So down here, let's just put this is the first title. And back on the list view, we're also going to get an error because the list row view is looking for that title. So now I can change this and I can put this is the first title here. If I click try again, we should now see it on our preview. And because we're going to have a whole bunch of items in this list, I'm going to reference a data array instead of just typing these in directly. So above the list, let's create an @state var items of type, and let's just make it an array of string for now because we don't have the models completed. And we'll set this equal to, and the first item will be this is the first title, comma, this is the second, comma, third. And in our list, we can now loop on this items array. So I'm going to delete this. We'll type for each, open the parentheses. We're going to go down to the ID and content completion because we don't have IDs on this array of strings. So we'll hit enter there. The data will be our items array. The ID, we're going to do \self to give each of these just a unique ID. The content, we're going to hit enter, get rid of this ugliness and just say item. And then for the code, we'll just add a list row view, open the parentheses, and the title, of course, will be the item. If I click resume on the canvas, we should now see 3 different items on our list. So this is looking better. And before we get into the actual data here, let's go ahead and create the navigation bar items as well as the next view. So underneath the navigation title, I'm going to call .navigation bar items, and we're going to use a leading and a trailing, so we have one on the top left and one on the top right. I'm going to put these on separate lines just to keep this organized. And the leading is going to be an edit button, which is a default button that comes in Xcode. We're not going to actually do anything with this button yet, but we're just going to leave it there for now. And this is going to be a navigation link, so that if we click it, we can navigate in our navigation view. So I'm going to put this on its own line. And we're going to add navigation link, open the parentheses. We're going to use the title and destination completion here. So the title is just going to say add. And the destination we haven't made yet, so let's just add a text saying destination. If we click resume on the canvas, we should now see these buttons at least on our screen. So we have our edit button on the top left, which is this edit button, and our add button on the top right. Now when we add these navigation bar items, you can see that the list kind of restyled by itself, and it will do that based on the environment, so based on what buttons you have. But I don't like the way this list looks, so let's reformat that. So on the list, I'm just going to add .list style, and we're going to start typing list style to see all of the completions that we have. I'm just going to use plain list style for now. open and close the parentheses, and our list should default back to how it looked at the beginning, which I think looks a little bit better. When we click this add button right now, if we click play on the live preview, it's just going to segue with a navigation link to a destination screen. And that's because we put destination as the destination. So let's now build out quickly what this screen is going to look like. And that's going to be a new view. So I'm going to right click on the navigator in our views folder, create a new file. This will be a SwiftUI view. And I'm going to call this add view. Click create. Once you're inside, click resume on the canvas, of course. And this is going to be a very simple view, but we do know that we're going to be in a navigation view when we get here. So let's embed our preview in a navigation view. Open the brackets, add the add view inside. And now the content of this add view, let's make it a scroll view. Open the brackets, and just to get rid of the errors, let's just add a text saying hi for now. And on the bottom of the scroll view, let's add .navigation title, and let's make the title add an item. Then I'm going to do the control command spacebar to pull up our emoji keyboard, and I'm going to type in maybe pen and use one of these pens, this ballpoint pen, because I think the emojis look really cool. And in our scroll view, we're going to have two very simple components. We're going to have a text field so they can type in what the item title is, and then a button to save or submit the item. So let's start with the text field. We're going to add a text field. Open the parentheses. We're going to use the title and text completion here. The title, which is the placeholder, let's put type something here, ... And for the text, we need to bind it to a string. So let's add a variable at the top here, @state var. Let's call it text field text of type string, and we'll set it equal to a blank string for now. We're going to bind it with the money sign text field text. And if we click try again or resume on the canvas, it should now show us a text field. It's not going to look very good by default, so we're going to have to do a little bit of formatting. So here it is, type something here, and let's format it quickly. Let's start by giving it a background. I'm going to use a color, open the parentheses, and type in color literal. I'm going to double click on the color literal and go click on the other. And I'm going to go to the crayon box here and maybe use one of these. This mercury color is probably pretty nice. And close that out. Before we add the background, let's make it a little taller. So let's do .frame with a height of 55. After the background, let's give it a corner radius of 10. And I want to embed it a little bit from the left side so the text is a little indented. So before we add the background and the frame, let's just add .padding, .horizontal. That should push it in a little bit. Let's hold the command button, click on the text field, and let's embed it in a VStack quickly. And then let's give the entire VStack some padding. So we'll do .padding, and then maybe 16. Maybe a little less, 14, so it looks like it kind of lines up with the navigation title. That looks good. And underneath the text field, let's add a save button. So this will be a button. Open the parentheses. We're going to use the action and label. For the action, I'm going to hit enter, make this 2 lines, but I'm going to leave it blank for now. For the label, the text is just going to say save. Let's make it uppercased after the quote here so that it's all uppercased. I'm going to give it a foreground color of white so that it has white text. Let's give it a background color of color . We're going to use the accent color, which is default in Xcode. Should be that blue that we keep seeing. Let's set the frame on this. We'll do .frame with a height of 55 so that it matches the height of our text field. Let's give it a .frame with a max width of infinity so that it's as big as possible. After the background, let's give it a corner radius of 10 so that it also matches our text field. And let's change the font. So right after we call foreground color, I'll call .font and maybe .headline. That looks pretty good to me. The button looks good. If we click resume, we can click on the button Obviously nothing is going to happen yet because we haven't added an action, but this screen is looking pretty good. So the final thing in this video to wrap up, let's jump back into the list view. And where we have our destination and we click that add button, let's change out this text for add view, open and close the parentheses. And if I click resume on our canvas here, we now have our list set up where we have all of our list items, and we can click the add button and very nicely we go to our add item view. We have our back button because it comes by default in our navigation view, and we can go back to our list. So this looks really cool. That's it for this video, guys. We set up most of the views in our app, and in the next video we're going to start looking at the models so that we can use more than just these plain texts. We can actually use to-do list items. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, I'm Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and I will see you in the next video.